So you're globally famous as the creator of Schitt's Creek, but there's something not everybody knows that you hosted 2 seasons of the great Canadian baking show, right? Were you a big fan of the British version?
I absolutely was. That's how I ended up getting involved. It's a very funny
So,
story.
yeah, tell us that story about how you ended up getting involved, because the rumor is that you sort of forced yourself on the role.
Well, I guess that's one way of seeing it. Well, to start, I think when I first discovered the Great British Baking Show, it was such a lovely sort of distraction. It was such a fun um, series to watch, and I was so
Yep.
taken by how well intentioned it was and how sweet it was. People weren't competing. It wasn't violent or aggressive. It was really kind
That's
of,
true.
and people were
Yeah.
competing for a cake plate.
That's it. There's no
Like,
money. There's no, yeah,
what
right.
kind of
Right.
wonderful, joyful place is fine with that being the prize? We're so used to $1 million prizes and all of this kind of very aggressive competition based reality programming, and so I was really taken by this sentimentality of it and the warmth of it. And one night I just happened to tweet, as I'm Canadian, that if the show ever came to Canada, I would love to throw my hat in the ring to host it. And I woke up the next morning to an email from the
No.
network saying, "We are bringing it to Canada, and are you serious about hosting it?" And within a month, I had signed on. And yeah, me and one of my closest friends ended up hosting it together. And we had just a lovely, lovely time. I've never had
Well,
to work out harder than I ever did while I was on that show.
because you ate a lot. What was the best thing that a contestant served
Gosh,
you?
you know what? I'm not even that discerning. It's like anything that's rooted in a carbohydrate, I will consume. And so I was the person that really tried everything. Even when things were failures and looked like they weren't very appetizing, I still went in and had to taste what it was like. 'Cause sometimes you'd be surprised at the biggest sort of failures of these bakes that look really bad ended up tasting really good. So I always needed to make sure that I got in there for each and every
Yeah, yeah.
one.
You wouldn't want to miss that, right? Exactly. So here's we can't get the episodes in the United States. Do you have any advice? Black market.
Yeah, I guess stream it illegally if you can. I don't say that on the record, but I guess we are videotaping this, so whatever.
We can believe
Um,
in it. Not a problem.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get it open to more people, but it's a very complicated process from what I've been told.
Well, speaking of Canada, we just entered the Canadian market as a service provider for software. Can you give us a little advice to blend in, how we should blend in once we arrive?
I guess just be very nice. Canadians are incredibly nice people. And it's a similar but very different culture. I don't think Canadians are raised with the same kind of like aggression that I think Americans tend to have innately. So be gentle with us. Um, and and we are a tremendously loving people. So
Yeah.
I wish you luck.
Super excited about it. So, I personally can't think of anything more stressful and exhilarating than hosting Saturday Night Live, and only the best of the best are asked to be a host. Tell us what it was like to get that call.
Well, it came through like on a Thursday night. I wasn't expecting it. And you have like a very quick turnaround to say yes or no to it. I don't know many people that are saying no, but in the moment, I was so sort of consumed with fear because I was excited, obviously, and flattered and honored to be asked. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute, I actually have to do this
You gotta
live
pull it off.
on
Yeah.
television. So is that something I feel like taking on? Obviously, we said yes, and it was an incredibly intense experience. But the cast made it so comfortable for me, and I think I've been such a fan of so many of those that team for so long, and to get to come and to spend a week in their company and to watch them do what they do so well, and to be able to be invited in and then treated so well when you get there by the cast. It was one of those great sort of life moments that, you're backstage about to walk out to do your monologue for SNL, and in my head I was like somehow back in high school, watching SNL on TV, hoping and
Yeah.
wishing that one day I could maybe even go there to watch, let alone host. So yeah, it was a full circle moment for a teenager who really wanted to one day get there.
That's so exciting. So, from the time that you get the script at the beginning of the week to the time that you go live, kind of give us an idea of what that was like, and was it everything that you imagined it was going to be like?
Um, yeah, I mean, listen, it was in COVID, so it's not quite as free spirited, I think, as it has been in the past when we didn't have to worry about wearing masks all the time, and comedy with a mask on, because I had to wear my mask for the whole week, is hard because you're ultimately just trying to like act with the top of your face, which
Yes.
makes you then question whether I'm an overactor. Is it a bad? Am I doing too much? But the early part of the week is really sort of honing in on the sketches that are working, and I was able to offer some thoughts on the sketches that I really liked, and I had some ideas in terms of how I could sort of get in there in a more meaningful way, and everyone was really receptive. And I think as a writer, it's a tricky thing too when you come into an environment where someone's writing for you, and they were so open and sort of appreciative of my thoughts, and then by the second half of the week, you're starting to rehearse and watch things come alive, and suddenly there's wigs being fit on your head and costumes that you're getting fitted for, and that's when I think the experience really came to life. That's when I started to think like, oh my gosh, we're actually going to be doing this on Saturday, whether I like it or not. We're going to be on that stage. And figuring out the monologue was really tricky because it came in on a Friday and I had to perform it on a Saturday, and there's just so much that goes on, and I'm so in awe of how they do it week after week, and how the cast are so at ease. I mean, they come in like, I of course was racked with anxiety and nerves, but they were all completely chill, and
Yeah. Just another week.
just
for
another
them.
week.
Yeah.
Just another
Yeah.
week of being live on television across the entire country. It's incredible.
In a sketch comedy. Did you learn anything about yourself that you didn't know through that process?
I think any time you push yourself way outside of your comfort zone, you learn something. And I think there comes a point, especially in when the stakes are that high, that I had to just kind of relinquish all control and say whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and all I can do at this point is try and have the best experience that I possibly can. Because worry and anxiety are not going to, I don't want that to be the takeaway from this experience, even though that comes quite naturally to me. I just needed to know that, like, whatever happens, I'm going to have fun with this and give it my all, and make sure that I can walk away from that experience knowing that I've done everything I possibly could.
I love that. Did you just collapse into a puddle of exhaustion at the end of the week?
Well, funnily enough, it's like 1:30 in the morning when the show ends, and my sister and my dad had flown in from California, and you're so pumped on adrenaline that I ended up staying up until like 4 in the morning just doing nothing. Like, I was on my phone. We ate some pizza after the show back at the hotel, but yeah, I was awake for a very long time after that.
Have to come down off of all that high. Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's funny you mentioned your dad and your sister. Everybody knows that your famous family and your dad and your sister in Schitt's Creek. We'd love to hear about how you found and nurtured your own voice, even though you were from a famous family.
Yeah, well, it's a tricky thing. I think, particularly being like, a child of someone who has succeeded in entertainment. I think the concept of nepotism is often inaccurately and lazily slapped on kids who happen to pursue what their parents do. I don't think it's an uncommon thing, and for me, growing, it's hard not to be curious at the very least when you have such a fun world around you growing up. In the case of my dad, he had built such a wonderful sort of group of people and friends and peers that were so skilled and engaging and charming and funny that it's such a magnetic kind of dazzling industry. So of course I was curious. From a young age, I always wanted to perform. And so for me growing up, it was really actually about distancing myself from my dad, which was an unfortunate but necessary thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
To really make sure that if I wanted to perform, if I wanted to write, if I wanted to get into entertainment, that I try to carve a path that is entirely my own. Because if someone helps you your entire journey, you don't have the ability to really know whether you did it yourself or whether you did it because of someone else.
True.
And so I ended up auditioning for MTV as a VJ when it first came to Canada, and made sure not to tell anybody in the audition who my dad was or where I came from. And I ended up getting the job with them not knowing. And so I was able to then spend 2 to 3 years on television, on MTV, writing my own stuff, hosting, my own television show, with an audience not even being aware of it, because I didn't mention it to my audience. And then when I felt comfortable, and when I felt like there was a community of people that were enjoying what I was doing, and I really felt self-assured in the work that I was doing, then I decided to make the announcement, if you will, that my dad was who he was. And we did so in a very funny little sketch for one of the shows that I was hosting, where he came and the audience was then going to connect the dots. But I really worked hard to make sure that I knew that I was capable. And then when I left MTV, I had this idea for Schitt's Creek, and I had so long admired everything my dad has done in the comedy world. But again, I didn't come to him until I felt like the idea that I had was strong enough so that I could hold my own in a conversation, so that I could hold my own in a professional context, so that I wasn't just bringing him something and then making him do all the work. It was really important that I knew that I was in control as well, because you never want to get into a situation where someone asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, but my dad does. It's a bad look,
Right.
and it's not how I want to present myself, because that's not who I am. I am a completely independent person. And I think the greatest thing my dad did was allow me to run the show without any interference from day one. And so I have, over the course of 6 seasons of Schitt's Creek, then been able to prove myself as a writer and a director and an actor completely independent of my dad while doing it alongside him, which is the greatest thing. So
What a gift to have them there with you through this.